it does not matter what your circumstances are. It matters what you choose to create from them.
Erika De La Cruz, hello, how are
Hi,
you?
I'm so well. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for joining me. First, I want to hear your superhero origin story because I find it just so inspiring.
I'm from a very small town. My parents moved to the States knowing no English, set up a Mexican restaurant in town for 30 years before I was even born. And then in 2009, I was in my first year of college and the economy crash hit, stripped away everything. The business, our home was foreclosed that my family designed and built. So we lost all of our items. They were sold to the state of California. My mom retreated to voluntary homelessness. As a 19-year-old, I didn't have much experience knowing, can I go back to school? What is a scholarship? What is a grant? So I did all the research. And then after our family lost everything, I tuned in real quick.
Yeah, and you,
And
you grew up really fast, it sounded like, too. You just had no choice but to.
I really, really wanted to still keep going with my life. All these dreams I had resurfaced. And I think it was the fear of losing that future that kicked me into gear to figuring out what I needed to do to get those things and still have a life that I loved, go back to school, do the things a 19-year-old would, go into therapy because everything seemingly happened overnight. And then I went into media. I kicked into overachiever drive when I got back to school, I think.
I can relate to that overachiever drive for sure, out of
Huge.
out of necessity. And I'm gonna unpack healing and support system a little bit with you. But your friends did something really amazing for you too, right?
Yes, a family friend I grew up with was heading to different swap meets across the state, and um, I always get emotional talking about this, and buying my items back for me, not letting me know. So I would go back to her home. She was my nanny growing up, but she would allow me to stay there because I didn't really have a home to go back to on breaks in college. And there would be more and more of our family's childhood items from the house. She would be like, "Oh, I saved them from the house until the day that she pulled out my grandmother's urn, and I had been looking for it, and she said, all of this stuff I've been going on the weekends because she worked full time and getting and buying back your stuff, but I wanted to let you know because this is your grandmother's urn, and she bought it for $3.99. I didn't know what was happening or where it was, but it was definitely a moment for sure.
As cliche as it sounds, do you believe that everything happens for a reason?
I really believe that everything happens for a reason. And if you approach the negative circumstances or things you perceive as contrast to what you want as happening for you instead of to you, I think that's when you get to work and flow with your life instead of butting up against it.
What is your piece of advice or your favorite piece of advice about staying positive?
I feel like staying optimistic and hopeful, it's really lies in your personal practices. Mental health is a habit. The same way physical health is. We're not making fun of people for getting on their treadmills or going to the gym or hiring personal trainers, but we think twice when someone's doing the cliche affirmations or practicing gratitude or getting in touch with themselves through therapy. And in reality, those are just the tools to get healthier mentally and err on the side of optimism more often. Because the game is not to eliminate negative thoughts, the game is not to always be positive. The game is when those negative thoughts come up, instead of having your monkey brain machinery of doubts and negativity lead the way by practicing optimism more often, uh, interacting with personal development, you can begin to have that access more often.
Was there a moment where you were like, oh, I need this to have my attention fully?
I believe my moment in becoming aware of myself was I was watching some YouTubes, pretty depressed in college, and some inspiring stories came up. And then that led to Bob Proctor. He's a personal development speaker. I just started watching him say, it does not matter what your circumstances are. It matters what you choose to create from them. They don't have to inform how you feel. Your feelings can actually affect your reality and they can affect your quality of life. So I started paying attention to how I felt. And if I was feeling negative, I started becoming aware of why, because practicing personal development isn't positivity 24/7. There's a rung of the awareness and becoming aware of what makes you tick, what makes you sad, what you need to release, what you need to feel. And then there's that choice of what you're going to put in its place.
I just love that these kind of iconic light bulb moments, they happen in the mundane, right? You're just watching this YouTube video, or if you're just like
Yeah,
walking through a park, or really kind of in a moment where you are taking care of yourself, you have these lightning bolt moments. That's in the times where that
totally.
happens, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like if someone sets a weekend aside to have an epiphany, chances are they're not going to have it. But if you're on a random walk or you see a tree a certain way, all of a sudden something moves within you and it means it's time, and more power to you.
You're an inspirational speaker. You're definitely one to me, especially in this moment. What do you want audiences to walk away with after hearing your story?
After engaging with people, I hope that people walk away with mental health as a conversation about empowerment. You do have power over whether something that happens in your life is going to break you, or whether you're going to take it, process it, and declare that something good, something better for your life is going to come from this. You can release victim and claim victor. No matter what that process looks like for you, it's available to you.
You're also an author,
Yeah.
and you've been featured in not one, but two best-selling books, and you've worked with some fairly noticeable brands. Has there been a pinch me moment for you?
The last book that I was in hit number one on the bestseller list, called Think Big. And I was so happy to see that, because it is literally just about thinking bigger than what your circumstances are. And then I was asked to be a part of a book for a nonprofit foundation with the Gronkowski family, Brian Tracy, all these other authors contributing to it. And it was a pinch me moment for that to do so well. I was like, oh, greater society is taking an interest in thinking bigger, moving from neutral to just a frequency above. How do we get bigger in our thoughts? How do we paint a grander world where everyone is sort of interconnected? Last year, with literally like Oprah, Whoopi Goldberg, Katie Couric, they're all mental health coalition
Yeah.
champions in this series that I was asked to be in. And I'm like, what am I doing here? But it doesn't matter who you are. If you have conviction in your message of empowerment, those messages are equal to those of the greats. And I realized, like, words of wisdom and inspiration, they're the same frequency no matter who you are. And that's a really high one and a really good one. And it can impact everyone no matter who you are or what you've done in your life.
Speaking of that frequency and staying on that frequency in space, kind of, I feel like you would agree that you are not only the representation that you didn't have yourself coming up in the world, but you're obviously this role model for so many others.
Yeah.
You look at yourself, past, present, and future. What would you say is your truth? Who and what are you today, would you say?
Your life quality depends on you and your effort into discovering who you are, discovering what you can be, what you want to do, the willpower and conviction you have to really taking on those practices, and not just watching a YouTube video and saying that's not for me, but watching that video and saying this is the one that's going to change me. That is my truth. And coming up, that wasn't available to me in a traditional Latin household. Personal development, creating your own reality wasn't something that I encountered often. So even nowadays, we talk about mental health, and sometimes those practices are distributed to the people who have access to them and they're in Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies? What about the blue collar workers? What about the traditional Latino households that I grew up in? Who, how are they accessing this information? And I hope that they can find me on a platform, on a social media feed, on a show like this, and be like, wow, that is thought provoking. Maybe this is for me. Maybe I can do this. So
I've always said your story is your superpower, and you are certainly more than a testament to that.
thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody. To see more episodes of Truth Be Told, check us out at Plus Life Media and pluslifemedia.com. Until next time, let your truth be told.